Hi, I am Courtney Williamson, and I am a local entrepreneur here in Pittsburgh. This is my second time with Ascender on this boot camp. So, super excited to be talking to you today about problems and stakeholders. So, I think you've already seen this diagram before, but we're starting at the top, looking at finding out what your problem is that you're solving, and then the stakeholders that are going to be benefiting from you solving that problem. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to go over what a business problem statement is, and then key terms that you're going to need to know, like business models, customer discovery, and then these three things here, which you may or may not have heard of: TAM, SAM, and SOAM. And then we're going to talk about how to determine who your business stakeholders are. And then we're also going to talk about tools and strategies to validate your problem statement. And then the last part, what's next? So I've got 99 problems, but a customer ain't one. Thanks, Jay-Z, for that. Um, the most important thing to know when you're an entrepreneur is that real businesses solve real problems. So here's Maria. You can see that she has a really pretty picture in her hand, and she's kind of pensively looking at the wall. And the reason why she's looking at the wall is because she's trying to figure out how to hang this sketch that she has. She's really interested in keeping it on her wall. And she needs to figure out how to do that. So her problem is she doesn't know how to hang the picture on the wall. So what does Maria need in this instance? Does Maria need an app that will help her to determine where to place the picture on the wall, maybe how high it should be on the wall? Maybe this app even tells her a color scheme for the wall. So maybe it suggests that she paints the wall a different color to really complement the picture and to bring out the beauty of the picture. Or maybe she needs an interior designer, somebody who can really say, Maria, I know that you really want this picture on the south-facing wall, but I really think it would look great in your bedroom, right? So maybe Maria needs an interior designer. Or maybe Maria needs a hammer and a nail. And if you guessed hammer is what she needs, you're absolutely right. Maria needs a hammer. She doesn't need an app. And she doesn't need a designer. So why am I saying all this? Because there's some common traps and things that I think entrepreneurs and people who want to start businesses fall into, and it can be really detrimental to building a business. It's really tempting to fall into the traps of not really solving a problem, because people will pay if you solve something that they actually have an issue for. So in the case of Maria, she didn't need an interior designer telling her where to put the picture. She already knew where she was going to put it. She also didn't need an app giving her instructions on how she should paint her wall. She literally just needed a hammer and a nail. So I think that's something that I struggle with seeing a lot of new entrepreneurs face when they have these really cool ideas, but they neglect to figure out how to solve the most basic problem that a customer has. So you have to solve a real problem that people are willing to pay money for. And I just want you to note that problems are actually not the same as inconveniences. So this is another trap that I see entrepreneurs fall into. So what do I mean by that? Okay, a problem is something that prohibits. So just think about that. Like, it's something that will make a person stop or not be able to behave in the way that they want to behave. Whereas an inconvenience is something that causes discomfort, but it doesn't necessarily stop somebody. So, for instance, if you own a car and your engine is not working properly, then that's a problem. The car is not going to be able to start, it's not going to be able to move, and you're pretty much grounded. That being said, if you own a car and you're in the hot summer heat of Pittsburgh and your AC or your air conditioning doesn't work, that's definitely an inconvenience. It makes it really uncomfortable to drive, but in fact, you still can drive the car. So, as an entrepreneur, when you're thinking about what problems you want to solve, please make sure that you're not just solving minor inconveniences that people grumble about, but they don't actually take action to fix. You want to make sure that you're solving problems that people are like, I will be prohibited from doing certain things if this is not solved. Another trap that is really easy to fall into is that it's easy to overthink and over-engineer a solution. So in the example of Maria, all she needed was a hammer and a nail. But it's super easy to say, hey, it'd be so cool if we could develop an app. Or it'd be so cool if we could develop this like electronic hammer that does all these really awesome things. Maybe, but if Maria just needs to hang up one picture, then over engineering a solution is not really going to help her. And it's not a guarantee that she's going to pay above what she would for getting a solution that she needs, which in that case was a hammer. And then this is a word of caution, and I see this, I would say, more often than not. You might be in trouble if you've created a solution before fully understanding the problem. So if you're listening to this video now and you have a really cool idea of something that you've built, whether it's a piece of software or an app or a physical product or a combination, but you really are, when you're honest with yourself, have not taken the time to fully understand the problem, then you might have a really cool science fair project on your hands, but not necessarily a product that's going to launch into a business that will actually solve people's problems. But I can guarantee you that if you commit to solving problems, you will always have customers. This is, I think, one of the most comforting things to know as an entrepreneur, that if you can pinpoint people's problems and provide applicable solutions, you're always going to have customers. People spend money to make their problems go away. So let's look at some examples. Problem number one, you're too tired to cook dinner. So a solution is takeout. We all know there's tons of takeout restaurants all around the city, all around the state, all around the world, right? You might be eating takeout now and watching this. Problem number two, you are hosting a bachelorette party, but it's too big for hotel rooms. So solution, you're going to Airbnb a mansion. You're going to find a huge house with 10 bedrooms and 2 beds in each bedroom. So that way your party will be accommodated and you can be as rowdy as you want without worrying about neighbors in neighboring hotel rooms complaining. Problem number three, no one will hire me because I'm too inexperienced. A solution, maybe you go to a 4-year college program and you get a degree. And then that way you can show your proficiency in a certain area. And now people are willing and able to hire you because they know that you've gone through this degree. And then the last problem, I don't know how to build a company. A solution is Ascender. That's why you're here, right? So you can see that in your own life, you have paid for your problems to go away. And it does not matter the economy. People pay for the problems to go away. So I know right now, let's see, it's April 2024. So there's a lot of market turmoil going on. That being said, people are still buying things. Customers, meaning individual customers, businesses are still buying things to make sure that their problems go away despite the economy. But I want you to just sort of focus and let's go a step further, because we really need to find the why behind the problem. And this is going to help us in a lot of ways. It's not enough to know the problem. You need to know the why behind it. Knowing the why will get into the psychological variables that will help with generating customer personas. So here's some questions to figure out and ascertain the why. When did the problem start and how long has it lasted? Is the problem constant? When did the problem arise? And then does the problem impact your potential customer, or does it also impact several people in their sphere? So these are really great questions to ask, to do some research, and then also definitely asking your potential customers, and we'll get into that later on in the presentation, because you really want to understand, like, okay, why did this problem exist in the first place? Why is it even here? And, you know, what what are the parameters around the problem? Once you understand that, then you can kind of go ahead and say, okay, so now that I know these variables, I can kind of guess what a good solution would be for my potential customers. Oh, and the other piece too is you want to ask, how does your customer describe the problem? If you ask them how to describe their problem, this is such a good hack and a trick. If you ask them and you record them or you take really great notes, you'll actually be able to use their own words in your web copy, in your ad copy, when you're explaining it to them, because they're the ones that know their problem the best. And as an entrepreneur, it's your job to know their problem as well, if not more than they do, so that you can provide a great solution and provide a great business. And this is the most important one, which is why it's bolded. If this problem was solved, what would it give your customer? Because here's the thing. I know we're talking about problems a lot, but no customer wants to dwell on their problems. They want them, like I said in the other slide, to go away. So you want to understand that transformational aspect. If I were to solve your problem, how would that help your life? How would that improve it? How would it change it? How would it transform it? That is gold. Once you can get somebody to explain that to you in detail, then you pretty much are set and you'll know exactly what it takes to make that person happy. So just as a recap for this section, don't give someone an app when a hammer will do. So this is just, again, back to the example of Maria. Please don't give people a solution that they really don't need and don't want and didn't ask for. That's just a really quick way to have a company tank or just not even get off the ground. You want to find the problem first before developing a solution. So if you are listening to this audio and watching this video and you have an idea for a really cool product, but you really don't know what problem it's going to solve, I'm telling you right now, you're probably behind the 8 ball. You're probably going to need to re-envision the entire solution, if not scrap it completely and just totally start over again, because it's very easy to see a solution-led company versus a problem-led company. Problem-led companies make money. Solution-led companies sound cool. That's typically how I see it. But if you solve problems, you're always going to have customers, which is really great to hear. You want to find the why behind your problem. And this is the most important question. If the problem was solved, what would that give your customer? Okay, so let's move into some key terms. A lot of this, it might seem all Greek to you, but that's okay. We're going to break them down. So let's talk about business models first. B2B. I'm sure you've seen this acronym somewhere. That means business to business. And it's a business that sells goods or services to another business. That's essentially what it is. So an example is Heinz to Kennywood. Heinz supplies condiments to Kennywood to sell to its customers. So if you've ever been to Kennywood in Pittsburgh, you know that they're famous for their potato patch fries. And what goes great with fries? You guessed it, Heinz ketchup. So Heinz will supply Kennywood or sell Kennywood its ketchup so that Kennywood can give you ketchup packets after you have purchased potatoes and other food from them. So that's what a B2B definition is. Common B2B enterprises sell software, office supplies, services, etc. It really, you can sell whatever another business would need or want. Okay, so another acronym is B2C. That is business to customer or consumer. And a B2C business is a business that sells products to consumers on a non-owned platform. So an example is ModCloth. ModCloth was actually a clothing company, a vintage clothing company in Pittsburgh in like the mid 2000s. And actually it ended up selling to Walmart. So it's a Pittsburgh success story, spun out of Carnegie Mellon. But basically ModCloth selling its clothing to consumers through Amazon, Walmart, Free People, which is another sort of store, consumer facing store, and their own website. So B2C enterprises can sell anything that consumers purchase for their own consumption, whether it be clothes, toiletries, beauty, automobiles, software, etc. Whatever it is that consumers purchase on their own. And then we have the last one is DTC or D2C, direct to consumer. And that's a business that sells goods or services directly to consumers using its own platform. So you might say, like, what's the difference between this and B2C? Well, this is an example is like Warby Parker, which sells eyewear to its consumers, but they only sell via website or their store, right? So you can't go into, I don't know, Vision Works, which is an ophthalmologist chain, and purchase Warby Parker product. You actually have to go into Warby Parker itself, or you have to go to the website. So it's super strict in that it doesn't necessarily distribute to any other platforms, online or in person. And the D2C space grew exponentially during COVID as people turned to online shopping due to the lockdown. There have been definitely some market shifts since COVID. There were amazing companies, D2C companies, that shut their doors because they got into a little bit of a bubble situation. So one example is Wink. They were I think they might still be around, but they're a direct-to-consumer wine company. And you can understand during COVID, people had nothing else better to do. So a lot of people turned to drinking, just sort of recreationally by themselves. And so because they really couldn't go into stores, Wink solved that problem of delivering alcoholic beverages to people's houses directly. But once people kind of were able to leave their houses and lockdown wasn't really a thing, Wink's shares plummeted. So there's been a lot of shifting in this space. But I want to also make a mention too that it's important to note that in this economy, you should be thinking about having an omni-channel approach, meaning omni-channel, meaning that you want to use all of these business channels to grow your sales. So you want to use B2B, you want to use B2C, and you want to use D2C. Because gone are the days where you could just rely on one channel to grow a company to profitability. You really need to figure out, how can I sell my product to businesses? Okay, how can I sell my product to businesses to wholesale to then turn around and sell to consumers? And then how can I sell my product directly to consumers? So those are some things that you should be thinking about. So then the next definition is customer discovery. So customer discovery is the process through which you determine who your customer is. And yes, that is singular, not plural. We'll get into it in a minute. What their problem is, and then what solving that problem would mean for them. That's essentially what it is. It's just a process through which you're figuring all this out. So as I said, you don't have many customers. You actually only have one customer. And this is the face that I get all the time when I tell people this. They get very annoyed with me. They hate when I say this. They think I'm crazy. I promise you, I'm not crazy. Here's why I'm saying you only have one customer. Because you can't focus on many. If you're focused on a lot of people, you're not going to be focused at all. You're going to have diffused awareness. You need to get really specific about one person, literally one person. So when I say, okay, what age is buying your product? Do not give me a range. Don't say 21 to 36. Nope. No person can be 21 to 36. If you're a person, you are one age. Give me an age. Who's buying this? Men or women? Oh, it's both men and women. Nope. Well, that's maybe controversial, but most people don't identify as both a man and a woman. Choose one, right? So you have to get very specific about one person because you need to build the avatar. An avatar is basically a fancy word for saying, like, this is a description, a very detailed description of who this person is. These are their likes, their dislikes, their tendencies, their habits, their thought processes. Like, you really need to go deep, and it goes beyond what you're selling. You really want to think about every single thing. That's why I'm saying just have one customer and build that avatar. And then don't worry, the hordes will follow. Because to be honest, when you take a step back and you look at that one avatar, you'll read it and say, oh, there's lots of people who like the color red and live in the city and worry about climate change, right? Like it's not just one person on the earth who has those characteristics. So by nature, you really will, of that being the truth, you really will have lots of people coming and relating to that avatar. But if you didn't have that avatar and if you didn't focus on honing on one singular person, then you would be all over the place because it's hard to really describe a group of people without bringing in all sorts of conflicting beliefs and conflicting tendencies. So you really just want to start with one. As your brand grows and continues, you might end up having multiple avatars, but that's for really sophisticated older companies that have proven product market fit, have made several milestones, and really have exhausted that initial first avatar. So this is where most of us are going to be for a very long time. And some people never move beyond their one avatar. They actually end up selling their company or exiting or whatever, just having focused on that one avatar. So this is super, super important. That's why I'm spending as a lot of time on this slide. Okay, so let's get into markets. TAM means total addressable market. So this is your big, if everybody bought number. So if you were thinking about making a new, I don't know, hybrid electrical car, for instance, that's your company idea, right? Like you want to think like basically your TAM would be anybody who has bought or will buy a car, just anybody, period. But your SAM is your serviceable addressable market. So this number is the, okay, let's be real, because not everybody's buying number, right? So in the TAM, I said anybody who's buying a car. But we know that if you're making a high-end luxury electric vehicle, like a rival to Tesla, not everybody is going to buy that. Some people don't believe in electrical cars. They don't, they want to have a gas car. Some people live in rural areas where there's no charging stations. Some people like, maybe don't, they really like a diesel car because they have sentimental values, whatever. Some people can't afford a luxury electric vehicle. So that's what your serviceable addressable market is. So it's going to be basically a parameter on the TAM. And then the last one is your SOM, which is your serviceable obtainable market. And this is your, okay, what resources will allow me to capture this number? So this means that, like, okay, you might be going after people who like luxury electrical vehicles, but the reality is it costs about $3,000 to acquire one customer. So all your marketing initiatives, et cetera, it's $3,000, and you only have $1 million to spend on marketing budget, right? So that's what your serviceable addressable market would be. It's like, with my resources, I really can only afford to convert X amount of customers. And so that's what I'm going to start with first. And so here's a definition cheat sheet. And you can just pause this video, take a screenshot if you want. So these are all the definitions that we went over. And it does take a little bit of time to remember them all. So don't worry if you don't remember them off the top of your head, but you'll get more and more comfortable with them as you continue on in your entrepreneurial journey. Okay, so let's go on to stakeholders. So who's got some skin in the game? Meet your new bosses, your stakeholders. So when I hear people say that they start a business to be their own boss, I really cringe because it's just so far from the truth. The reality is that every business has stakeholders, and these people need to be happy in order for your company to thrive. They're super important. You can't neglect them. You can't just go off on a tangent and do whatever you want. I mean, you can, but your business is not going to succeed. So here's some examples of stakeholders: customers, investors, other businesses. Remember, you are in an ecosystem. I know that it's exhausting being an entrepreneur, and it's easy to just focus on yourself all the time. But the reality is you are in the middle of an ecosystem with other businesses. So being mindful of that. The government is also an example of a stakeholder. Alignment is key among stakeholders, but it can be really tricky. So not all of your stakeholders will share common interests and needs. And this can be really, really tricky for entrepreneurs. And sometimes I advise that people abandon a business idea if they can't envision stakeholder alignment, because it really can sink a business. So what your investors want from you might be very different from what your customers want. And if your customers aren't going to buy into what your investors want, then their behavior is going to make it so that investors do not want to continue supporting you financially. That's a problem, right? If what your investors and customers want, the government is not down with, then that's going to mean sanctions, shutdowns, etc. So you really have to make sure that there is alignment. And if there isn't, and it's really bad, you might want to reconsider your business idea. You do need to make sure that your solution makes sense for all the stakeholders. So that's super important. So let's go into some tools and strategies and resources that you can use today, because I think it's important to start doing things as soon as you can. It's important to get feedback quickly. So these are some things that I love to use to get feedback. Google Forms, it's free and it's anonymous. So you can set Google Forms up so that when people respond, if you give them like a survey questionnaire to fill out about either like a prototype that they've been able to take a look at and experience, or just concepts that they're responding to, you can ask them those questions and then you can have them respond back to you anonymously so that they feel more comfortable sharing their truth, which is really important for you as an entrepreneur. And remember, if we go back and think about all of those problem questions that I recommend that you ask, like that's what I would load into my Google Forms. And then there's a site called Ask the Public. And I think it's a really great site because it gives you insight into what people are Googling, what are they asking? Because typically when people ask questions, it's because they need a solution. So what better way to sort of understand what people's problems are than mining problem statements or question statements that people themselves have volunteered to ask. You can also build out focus groups. I think focus groups are really, really valuable in terms of examining a prototype that you might have, or kind of workshopping problems or questions that you're toying with as you're thinking about building your company. And then SurveyMonkey and then MTurk, those are two companies that actually have survey panels where you can just, if you don't have friends who can answer your questions and be in your focus groups, either because they're not your target customer or for whatever reason, you can actually go and for a fairly reasonable price, these two companies, and I know there are other ones as well, will ship your questions out, will send your questions out to people whose job it is to answer your questions, to answer your surveys, and to give you feedback. This is all done anonymously, which makes it amazing. And these people don't have your best interest at heart. So they're not like trying to protect you or shield you if they don't like your idea. They're just answering honestly. So I really love these two resources. And just remember, if you don't ask, you won't know. So it's so important to get feedback. So these are some tools and things that you can quite frankly start using today to start vetting and figuring out whether or not your idea is important, and whether your idea is interesting enough to people. So what's next? Success requires speed. Don't overthink, but do overact. It's easy to get into your head and second guess yourself, which is why it's crucial to receive feedback from your customers. You want to do it early. Even if you don't have a prototype, you really want to get in front of people as soon as possible to make sure that you're on the right track. If you're kind of scared about sharing an idea, you're probably sharing it at the right time. You do not want to get so far down a path that it feels like a little bit of sunk cost to leave and deviate, even if you've heard different feedback from other people. It's really important. And then this is really crucial. I hear this so much and it really bothers me. Stop worrying about someone stealing your idea. It's virtually impossible at the stage that you're at for somebody to steal your idea and make millions and millions on it. The reason being is because ideas are worth $0. They're literally worthless. Ideas are worth nothing. But execution is where the value lies. And so doing this Ascender program, this is a part of your execution, how you follow up, how you continue on the path, even when things get difficult. That's where the value lies. But spouting out an idea is not valuable at all. So please don't get anxious and don't be cryptic about what it is that you're doing, because then you're never going to get feedback that you need. So thank you so much. I hope that you learned about problems, statements, and stakeholders, and that you're able to take this into your company.